we are constantly making sure that we're showing up for our employees and giving them the space that they need to be successful. So as many organizations are doing, we have focus-free Fridays so that you have no meetings, and that allows for additional flexibility. I will tell you, I get very excited when it's time for focus-free Fridays because now I can, catch up on that activity that I needed to do or work on that project I need to work on, or step away and be able to do something within my home that has to be managed that I wasn't able to do in the course of the week. So having that flexibility is amazing.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host. This week, I am talking with Victoria Perrin, Director of Culture and Innovation for Enabling Solutions, as well as the Black Consumer Initiative Lead at Prudential Financial. So that means Vicky is sitting at the intersection between people, culture, experiences, all at Prudential Financial. What we talk about in this conversation is how she and many of their leading voices at Prudential are really adopting this listen and learn way of being as they're trying to get their arms around the return to work movement, if you will. In this conversation, Vicky breaks down specifically what is working, what is not working, how they're engaging employees, how they're adopting things real time to be very, very people-centric in an effort to offer what we call is optionality. Not looking at it as a mandate, but trying to figure out what's going to work best for their population of talent. You do not want to miss this conversation. If you are like me and many of the other people that I'm talking to, like we're trying to get our arms around, how do we do this? How do we navigate this extraordinary circumstance of leading organizations and trying to grow and scale when we are changing so drastically our business models of, do we live in the office? Do we do hybrid? Do we do remote? So we break down all of this in this conversation. So get your pen and paper out. This is a part of a month-long focus talking with various leaders in various industries about the future of work. Here we go. Welcome to Warriors at Work. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host, and we are continuing to have conversations with leaders about the whole return to work initiative, way of being. And I'm thrilled to have with me here today, Victoria Perrin. Vicky, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jeanie. So excited to be here.
So I'm thinking before we get into our actual interview, your role at Prudential Financial is so interesting, and I want you to expand upon it. So you're the Director of Culture and Innovation for Enabling Solutions, as well as Black Consumer Initiative Lead at Prudential. And I know the two intersect. They're both very, very important to the strategy at Prudential, but I'd love for you to describe what those two roles are and how they intersect in the relationship to today's conversation.
Most definitely. It is super exciting to be in these two roles. When I tell you it's unique and has never been done before, it definitely is the case. So prior to taking on the Black Consumer Initiative lead role, I was working closely with our engagement team as part of culture and innovation. And the role was to ensure that people felt that they could bring their authentic selves to work and that they had the knowledge that they needed to be successful. With all that's happened in the world, my work leaned more into racial equity. And so I was doing a lot of work there to make sure that our diverse population, as well as our entire population, had a voice, were able to bring their perspective to the table and be able to strive in the environment which they were in. From
Mm.
there, we talked about, well, what does this mean to our consumer? They probably have an experience just like this where they don't have a voice. And so an opportunity came about where they wanted to address the Black consumer and the fact that there is a huge wealth gap, but there's also opportunities that we don't think the Black consumer is taking advantage of within financial wellness. So they asked if I would be interested in helping put focus on that uh, segment and address the needs of the Black consumer. And I said, of course. As a people person, I could not say no because it resonated with me. Being a Black
Mm.
millennial, it was just it made sense that we needed to have this conversation and make sure that the Black consumer was at the forefront of the conversation.
Oh, I love that. So let's talk about Vicky being in this role. So let's talk about it first through the lens of leadership. Tell us how you would describe yourself.
So I am a unicorn. I am unique unto myself. And at the same time, I have been fortunate enough to have an opportunity to touch a lot of things. Um, when I initially started in corporate America, I thought I was going to be an HR business partner because I was a people person who wanted to always be in the know. And if that's not HR, then what is?
Yeah.
Um, but as I continued to grow as a professional, I definitely realized that I am quirky and I like to do fun things and I wanted to be unique and I wanted to leverage my creative side. And so it transitioned into working in project management and utilizing the knowledge that I gained from traveling and my DIY work and just being unique. Um, it allowed me to create the role that I'm in today. So when I say that, it's the fact that the role didn't exist, but as I talked to my leaders and had conversations about what I was looking to do, I was able to establish an opportunity that hadn't been done before.
Mm.
As I mentioned, being a people person, you get to interact with a lot of individuals and you get to see the needs of the population. And I knew there was an area where people wanted to make sure that they felt ingrained in our organization within the community that is Prudential. And I wanted to be a part of making that happen. And so I was able to, make this what it is today.
I'm thinking what a great blend of your people affinity with DIY in the creation of these roles. And then also when I think about, the premise of this conversation is what Prudential and you specifically are doing as you're having conversations about the return to work discussions. I'd love for you to share with us what's the process been like for you, and what are you learning?
Yeah. Um, as you can imagine, the pandemic in general has been overwhelming,
Mm.
and people are taking it in stride in different ways. So I have had the opportunity to learn what it's like as a person who comes from a family of people who are older and having to make sure that they remain safe. I've had to watch my peers as they care for young children in this environment and having to manage everyone being at home. Um, Having to watch my peers who were previously told, which I think has happened in every corporate environment, that their job was required to be at home or in the office, and then learn that you can actually do things at home. At the same time, individuals who are working from home and having challenges doing that because they have so much going on in their home space. So there's been so many different experiences that I've had over the course of the past 15 months. But each and every one of them has definitely shown that we're never going to be the same ever again.
Mm.
Our environment has changed in some ways for the better. Like I now can get an extra 2 hours of sleep every day compared to having to wake up at 4 in the morning and go to the gym and do my commute and do all those things. But at the same time, I miss the in person interactions. It's impactful being able to strengthen those relationships or be a helping hand when you get to see something. You don't get that same interaction in a virtual environment.
Mm.
So that's been a huge experience for me. Is how do you still remain efficient in a virtual setting? And I think we've done well. But as we continue to move forward within whatever this life is going to bring, as we have variants and potentially going back into quarantine, um, what is it going to look like as we continue to move forward as people and, within our corporate environments?
So let's talk about it now through your role. As I said, you're very central to these return to work discussions for the organization. How do you prioritize all of these voices and take action on them? And I'd love for you to give some examples where you're able to prioritize, because you gave a lot of examples of different types of experiences that we're all having. But as an organization, as a leader that's really trying to drive some change, how do you make choices here?
Yeah. Um, I think it's first and foremost all about the people. Um, Being a people leader, you have to make sure that your workforce is in a good space. So for us, there was a lot of conversations about how does someone work from home? What does that look like? And the things that you need. And equipment, you would not imagine would be such a huge entity, but it is. We were very fortunate that people were vocal in ensuring that they had what they need. But at the same time, we continued to make sure that they felt comfortable in the setting in which they were in under the circumstances.
And what about in today's environment as you're leading some of these discussions on returning to work? I mean, you shared with me some really interesting things that you're doing to really understand these voices. How are you implementing any kind of action based upon what you're hearing today?
Yeah. It's a lot of conversations. We're constantly having to discuss how people are feeling, take a pulse check on this our workforce to make sure that they feel comfortable with moving forward. As you can imagine, there are people who are ready to come back, while there's others who are now more comfortable working remotely. Others who aren't prepared to return because they're not vaccinated, and vice versa. So uh, we are definitely we're showing grace when it comes to moving forward with this experience.
And is there anything unique or creative that Prudential is doing as an organization to have grace and to be employee centric?
Yeah. We're doing a lot of engagement activities. We are constantly making sure that we're showing up for our employees and giving them the space that they need to be successful. So, as many organizations are doing, we have focus free Fridays so that you have no meetings, and
Mm.
that allows for additional flexibility. I will tell you, I get very excited when it's time for focus free Fridays because now I can, catch up on that activity that I needed to do or work on that project that I need to work on or step away and be able to do something within my home that has to be managed that I wasn't able to do in the course of the week. So having that flexibility is amazing. There's a lot of discussions. We do a lot of conversations to make sure that people remain informed. So they're almost like town halls, um, but they are ask me anything. How are you feeling? What questions do you have? Let me make sure we keep you in the loop on what's going on. And then, of course, constantly communicating the status of where we are. We have to reimagine the workplace and make sure that people remain informed, and people need to remain informed in different ways. So you get emails, conversations with your leaders, and you take part in conversations. But we've made sure that there are different avenues in which people can remain looped in on what's going on within the organization.
So when you
Communication is everything.
so when you say town hall meetings, so are those senior leaders leading those that they're just
Yes.
taking live Q&A?
Yes, we have a variety of leaders who will take part in those conversations. And we open it up and we say, bring all your questions, no question's a bad question. And it's great because they are truly honest in those conversations. And it's not that they're not always truly honest, but you get to really get down to the nitty gritty and feel comfortable asking the tough questions that you may be concerned may not be answered. They are.
So when you think about all of these incredible conversations that you're having, and I love this idea of having an engagement philosophy. It's all about being very employee centric. Where do you draw expertise and guidance and support from to discern what the next action or decision is going to be? So, like, tell us, like, what's the circle? What does the circle look like?
So I'd love to say I go online and I Google and I find all this content. Um, I wish it
No,
were
there
that
is none.
easy.
There is none. That's why we're
No.
having these conversations.
Um, it is truly having conversations with our people. The amount of ideas and innovative thoughts that come out of our talent is amazing. And having those discussions and asking for their recommendations has been such a value. Um, what I find is as we're talking to them and we do listening forums and focus groups and what would work, they tell us precisely, like, I'm an hourly employee. This is my situation. This is what I need. And we're like, consider it done. And I call everything a test and learn. Let's trial it out. Let's see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll scale it and we'll keep building on it. And if it doesn't go well, we can tweak it. Nothing is ironclad. We can definitely make changes. And so we've done a lot of that. We've also made sure that we remain transparent and also try to uh, eliminate that gap between our senior leaders and our frontline talent. And that's been a great success. What we have trialed out time and time again are these networking roulette events. And it's an opportunity for you to be connected to someone random within our organization who's also part of the roulette event and get to know them. And at times, it might be the head of our department who you're getting to connect with, a senior leader, and you might be an hourly rep. And they just have conversations. We provide them a set of questions that they can use, or they can just build an organic relationship. But we always hear that they're so excited about this and that they look forward to the next time they get to do it because they continue to connect, talk about different things, offer up recommendations, and walk away with true connections.
So interesting. So I'm imagining there's all these activities. You have this group of leaders that are involved in, I'm just going to call it a task force because I can't think of a better term. And you're testing and learning as you're going. And then how does it get deployed down to each department when a decision is made company wide? Or is this so customized that it really becomes almost like a case by case, which there's like a whole nother logistical question around that. So I'm trying to figure out like how are decisions deployed? How are decisions deployed, new ways of being deployed?
Yeah. So, yes, I would say we created a task force, and the task force generates these ideas. We share it with our senior leaders that we're going to trial some things out, and then we ask different groups. And we know
Mm,
that groups are unique unto themselves. So at times we know what may work better in one group versus another. But I would say we have this fun arrangement of content that can be pulled from, almost like a toolkit, and from there, we just say, we have a array of things that we'd like to try. Would you be open to it? And our leaders within those groups are usually extremely excited to try things out because they
mm.
always want new ways to engage with their group. So we trial it out. If it works well, we kind of go word of mouth after that. Other people hear, oh, I heard you had that event. I heard you did this thing. Sometimes it extends further, and next thing you know, someone from the enterprise level wants to talk about it. I heard you guys did this thing, and it was really good. I'd like to recreate that for my team. So we definitely ensure that with the partnerships throughout our organization, we can trial different things out, see how they fare, and then make the modifications from there.
And what is Prudential's position right now on the quote unquote return to the office?
Yes. As I mentioned, we are not rushing into anything. So initially, we were supposed to return back to work in July. Then it became September. Now they're saying October. They want to make sure that they are setting us up for success and that we are keeping our employees' safety in mind. And if society and our environment is not ready for us to transition back to work, then we won't.
Mm,
But at the same time, I definitely think corporate America in general understands that we're not going to go back to the way it was. It's going to have to be hybrid. Um, People are going to be working remotely full time. We're going to have other people who are going to come in 2 days a week, And then we're going to have others who will be excited to be there 5 days a week. But there's never going to be one solution. There are now options. And we've proven that we can work in any environment, if it is from home and if it is in the office. We have people now who aren't even in the same state. Because of the pandemic, people have moved to other locations and have still been very successful working from different time zones even. So we've proven that the way of working is going to be different moving forward. And I think many organizations are looking at each other to see how they are going to fare and how they're going to approach it and following suit.
Yeah, you used the word option. That's like my favorite term these days. Is like it's all about optionality. It's all about optionality and challenging the notion of how traditional business structures were built. That doesn't work anymore. Which really brings up an interesting question. I've been talking about this with so many of my colleagues. When you think about what happens in an office, besides you're getting work done and you're teaming and you're interacting, your career trajectory, your visibility, all these terms, these buzzwords, visibility, how am I being showcased? How am I being positioned for other things? Who are those key people I can have lunch and coffee with? Obviously, whether you're 100% virtual or you're hybrid, it's going to be trickier. So how are those discussions coming up in your engagement? And then what's been the philosophy around how are we going to tackle that?
Yeah. Networking and development is definitely a major consideration when talking about working virtually, trying to figure out how to continue to do that. We made sure within my organization that there is still a path to ensuring that people are networking and engaging with each other. So it is virtual, but we haven't slowed down from having mentorship opportunities, from making sure that people receive visibility. I mentioned that networking roulette, being able to connect with others, we know is really important. Being remote shouldn't stop you from being able to continue to develop yourself as a professional, and it shouldn't slow you down from being able to connect with people. Is it less ideal? 100%. I would love to meet in person, but I won't let these circumstances stop me from connecting with people. And I say that in every facet, even personal. At the peak of the pandemic, having the opportunity to go onto a Zoom and have, a workout session with my friend who lives in Miami was awesome. We were still able to connect and we were still being really productive, and it was amazing. And we had to make sure that we had something similar for a work environment. Is it ideal? No. Are we going to make sure that people stay connected? 100%. So I've been very happy to see how people in general have flexed with the circumstance, because it could have been worse. People could have just shut down and said, well, it's not meant to be. And rather they stepped up and said, I'm going to make this work for me.
One of the things that I've seen work really well, and I do this for myself, is in the absence of doing virtual coffees and drinks and all of that, as we're, videoed out, I have taken up more and more reading. So whether it's quick articles, whether it's quick videos, and that's another way to touch base. Hey, saw this, thought of you, or I really admire something that you said in this. And I'm just finding that you can have a little bit of content with a lot of conversation virtually. And then it's like, hey, find 20 minutes on my calendar. I'd love to talk to you more. And what it also does is it breaks us out of our traditional transactional working norms. So when we're quote unquote on, whether you start at 7 or you start at 9, we'll index more towards transactional ways of being. Check those things off my list. I'm going meeting. I'm doing probably my work either before or after hours, but to build in that human being connection time around a specific content, that's actually a part of your personal strategic evolution. Yeah. It's just as important, because you'd be doing some variation on that theme if you were doing it in person, and it actually would take longer because you'd have to do setting up meeting stuff, you setting up coffees, you'd be going out, you'd be doing all these things. This is actually shorter, and it ties directly to your personal interests, which is what's making a lot of this experience really unique, is the humanness of it. We're finding so much more out about people that we see and interact with every day beyond just their face on a screen. Like, who are you in the world? What are your interests? And if we're taking an interest in someone else in a unique and powerful way, it really goes back to what you were talking about, is engagement, because I'm much more likely to reveal to you things that are really on my mind if you're engaging me outside of like a traditional transactional way of being. So I'm highlighting that because it's been a strategy that's worked really, really well. And I'm a geek. I'm a reader. Like I read books and magazines and articles like a maniac. So to me, it was like, hey, I could actually talk to somebody else about this and share some common interests. So I just throwing that out there on the heels of what you were just talking about. When you think now about your charter in your role, particularly as the director of culture and innovation, what thoughts and questions are you sitting with when you think about how everything we're talking about impacts culture and innovation?
Yeah. Um, I always think about the people. And I feel bad always referencing people, but I think that they're one of the most important resources you possibly can have. And the thing that I always think about is, how do we recognize them? Recognition and confirmation and acknowledgement is extremely important. And it's a huge component of engagement. When you are highly thought about, when you feel cared for, you strive to do more. And in a virtual environment, it's not the same. I can't walk over and pat you on the shoulder and say, thank you for what you've done. So, how do we still recognize people and ensure that it hits their soft spot or makes them feel warm inside, um, in this new way of working? So, we tried a lot of different things out. Do you feed them? Food is always a good thing. And send over, a Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever the case might be. Do you send over gift cards? How do you make sure that they feel that they are being recognized for the things that they do? And we've had to be creative in trying to figure that out. And some things resonated and other things less so. The thing that seemed to resonate the most is being reached out to via phone, having a leader call you and thank you for the work that you do and
Mm.
talk to you a little bit about it had a huge impact, to the point where if it was a voicemail they received, they played it over and over again and then sent the leader an email to thank them for that. And it was so impactful to not only them, but their families, that we knew that that had to remain a huge component to
Mm.
how we recognize people.
Are you seeing any generational differences in terms of how all of this is impacting culture and innovation?
100%. As a millennial, I think I'm more comfortable and more tech savvy. I live in a digital world, so it hasn't impacted me as much. But as I look at people like my dad, who's a baby boomer, he does not know what to do with himself. He's starting to become more tech savvy, but I think it was expedited by being in the pandemic and being at home.
Look out over the next 6 months and talk to me about what you see is going to be Prudential's way of being.
I think we're going to be hybrid. I think we're going to be in an environment where I'm not going to have the same people sitting alongside me as I had prior to the pandemic, which is understandable. Um, I am very fortunate to work for a company that is looking out for their employees. And with that, I think everything is going to be different. Um, and when I say that, it's because they're going to provide options that weren't previously available. And with that, our entire workspace is going to be different.
When you think back on the conversations that you've been a part of whether they're internal, external, talking with employees, what has been most profound where you were like, whoa, wow, that's amazing?
I think the most profound conversations I've had are with employees who talk through having to live in an environment that is um, general, generationally diverse. And when I say that, they're living in a home with young children themselves and elderly parents and having to traverse that.
Mm,
And it is amazing to me that people are able to manage as much as they do. And I don't think that we appreciated that prior to the pandemic as much as we do now because we're in everyone's homes. We get to see um, how they move on a daily basis through the video conversations that we're having. So I actually said this morning to someone that I loved seeing parents parenting. So we had one of our senior leaders talking to her daughter and was like, I need you to help me. And she was just like, I need you to get dressed. Please get dressed. And she's like, I'm so sorry, guys. I just need her to get dressed. And it was
I
just so
love it.
nice because it humanized that individual, but it also was like, I know I'm not alone. And if I'm struggling or if I'm going through this situation, I can tell and see that others are also going through something that's unique to them. Um, but I think that's the part where I'm just like, wow. And it's just wow in a way where I'm just like, it's nice to get to see people in a more genuine state.
Mm.
Because you may not have gotten that in the workplace. People are buttoned up, you're wearing a suit, you're playing your role, but you might not see all that makes up that person. And now you truly do.
Mm, I love that story. It reminds me earlier on in the pandemic, there were so many fantastic stories of how senior leaders or leaders in general were negotiating such extraordinary circumstances. And there was a story about I think he was a chief operating officer, and his son kept interrupting him. And he said, if you interrupt me one more time, you're going to have to stay for the meeting. And he interrupted one more time, and the kid had to sit through the whole meeting. And it was so funny. I mean, he never did it again, obviously. Lesson learned. But it's just, I love that we're just seeing all aspects of ourselves going through this experience. And I am so appreciative of the whole philosophy that you've shared here about engagement and really hearing people for where they are and seeing places where customization might be appropriate and or where could we make some shifts organizationally and departmentally, and the shared team spirit I'm picking up, like everyone's seeing and we're all moving in the same direction. We're all marching towards the same goal, which is we have a job to do, but we're also human beings going through an extraordinary experience. I would love for you to talk about you personally, Vicki. When you think about your journey over the last year and a half, how do you steady yourself? How do you stay grounded?
Yeah. Um, I I laugh and say Korean dramas got me through. um, I it's hilarious because I am very fortunate to have a very strong family structure, and my friends and family constantly remind me that I am in a good place and that everything will be fine and that they're here to support me. At the same time, trying to get through all of this, you have to keep yourself busy. And so I gained an affinity for Netflix Korean dramas to the point where it changed my algorithm. And
I don't
um,
even know what that is.
so it is just Korean television. I can tell you it's helped me speed up my reading because you have to read subtitles and it goes really fast. The storylines are very intense and keep you very engaged to the point where I started telling people about it at work, and I gained a group of new friends who also watch Korean dramas. So they're like soap
Oh,
operas in Korean. Um,
huh.
so yeah, I can tell you, I think over the course of the past 15 months, I've just done a lot of different things because we had time and opportunity.
Hmm.
So I tried to have a green thumb that failed. I kept doing my DIY work. So I have lots of projects completed, some not. Um, I got to, catch up on lots of television I hadn't watched. I obviously picked up new shows. I did a lot of reading. But while doing all of that, I made sure to keep my families and friends as close as possible because they're truly what kept me grounded and comfortable going through this experience because this is a unique time that we've never experienced before.
Mm, mm. When you think about your own warrior journey, being obviously this is the Warriors at Work, so this is a more of a personal question for you, Vicki.
Yeah.
What are you working on in your own journey? What are you looking to either strengthen or get better at?
Yeah. For me, I want to be a multiplier. I'm fortunate enough to be in a lot of rooms and have a lot of conversations with people, and I am able to see opportunities that some may not. And I know how to connect people to certain work. So most recently, I have been doing my part in ensuring that I elevate others and give them the opportunities that others have given me over the course of my career. I've also made sure that I am a representation of Black women in the workplace. I think representation is extremely important right now. And being able to see someone who looks like you in a role that you may aspire to be in is really important. So I'm trying my best to show up and be visible to others and mentor and coach others so that they can be brought along in this journey as well.
Mm. So my last question is for anybody listening, watching. What are some of the best ideas or practices that you have seen in the last year and a half? If for anybody that's trying to get their arms around their return to work, whatever that they're going to call it, what are you wanting to surface for them? Best ideas and practices.
I would say best idea would be to make sure that you are allowing people to go through the journey, their own journey. And when I say that, it's about giving people grace, understanding that everyone has their own unique circumstance and that we all do not fit in one box. We never did, but people tried to put us all into one box. And now we've proven that there are different shapes and sizes and that people need to live their own journey. And we need to allow people to do that. As uncomfortable as that may sound, it's extremely important. And allowing people to live their own journey will also strengthen them as individuals and as professionals. Because now that they're able to flex, adjust, or modify their lives to accommodate their needs, they'll be able to do what they need to do to strive and be successful.
I love that word, grace. I love that that is something that you embody and you teach it and practice it as a leader and as an organization. So Vicki, thank you so much for joining me in this really important conversation. And I'm hopeful for anybody watching, listening, you've gotten some perspective, some ideas, but also an acknowledgement that we're all trying to figure this out. There is no one way to do it. And I'm just really, really appreciative of all the ideas and perspective that you've offered here. So thank you for being you and doing all this incredible work in the world. So looking forward to seeing and hearing more in the months ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeanie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeaniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.